Aloha and welcome to This Is Now. Sadness shifts to anger and frustration as the public demands accountability from this county and state leaders over the deadly Maui wildfires and their emergency response.
The man who defended his decision to not sound the sirens has left his post, and Lahaina residents are demanding to have a say in the future of their town. Now, here's the latest out of Maui. The governor has confirmed at least 1,000 people are still unaccounted for. This is 10 days after the fatal fire engulfed Lahaina. 58% of the disaster zone has been searched so far, and the death toll remains at 111. That has been unchanged for the last 2 days now. The Lahaina fire is now 90% contained, the Olinda blaze 85% contained, and the Kula fire is 80% contained. There are no active threats to any structures at this time, according to officials. Now, recovery efforts continue as more federal resources arrive. Nearly 1,000 federal responders are on the ground here, and an unsafe water advisory remains in effect for Lahaina and Upper Kula residents. Officials say boiling the water will not make it safe. Now, because of that, donations of water, food, and other supplies are taking place at the Lahaina Gateway Center and Napili Plaza.
And just a few moments ago, our Chelsea Davis was there at a press conference with Native Hawaiian leaders. Aloha, Chelsea, what can you tell us?
Aloha Dylan, aloha Ash. I'm at Wahikuli Wayside Park, right across the street from the Hawaiian homestead Le'ali'i here in Lahaina. And this is where Native Hawaiian community members came together to address the media. They had a news conference just a couple of hours ago, and they have multiple demands of government officials, one of which is to let their community grieve. They said give them time to grieve. The fire happened only 10 days ago, and they said many people are still in shock and mourning. They say the government should not rush to rebuild the community without first giving the people time to heal, and especially without including the community itself in the planning.
It's really important for us to look at Lahaina as a legacy and a reminder of positive change. We are still grieving, our community are still grieving, and we need that time to find closure before we go forward, and not just streamlined in the process of governmental rule. Give us time to heal, give us time to find closure, and be open and allow us to sit at that table so we can be a part of the solution and not the problem.
They're also demanding that government put the community first in any planning process for rebuilding Lahaina. They say this is an opportunity to rebuild how they see fit. They say they have advice for government officials, and that is to listen. Again, they are demanding that government officials work directly with the community to rebuild Lahaina. They say the future of the Lahaina community depends on it. Reporting live in Lahaina, Dylan and Ash, back to you.
Chelsea, thank you so much for that report. I got to ask you, you have, obviously you are our Maui resident reporter here, and you have been there since all of these fires broke out. What have you seen in terms of the shift of public attitude? What are people feeling today now that it's been more than a week since this disaster?
Yes, Dylan, it's been 10 days since this disaster struck, and in the beginning, everyone was still in just shock and still trying to save lives out there. It was a recovery effort, and so it was very much a life-saving operation. It was a rescue mission, and now the shock has somewhat settled a little bit. People are starting to take it in, and even though it's still a recovery mission out there, as you mentioned, people are starting to get frustrated. They want better communication. We've actually been saying that from day one. They want more transparency. But the community leaders that spoke today, they're from this community, generations from this community, and so they're not asking, they say they're demanding that government officials work directly with them. They want to be part of that planning process. They want to be involved. They say they know what's best for this community, and they say the future of the community depends on it.
Chelsea, early on we heard that residents in the burn zones, they weren't able to get the supplies they needed in a timely manner. Has that changed? Are people getting what they need when they need it now?
From my understanding, and of course I can't get to all the communities, they're still media and public are not allowed in what we're calling ground zero. So there's an entire fence around the perimeter, but I can get to communities such as this one that you see behind me. It's called the Hawaiian Homes Le'ali'i here, and actually they have their own checkpoint, just a community checkpoint where they tell me they want to protect what's left in there. There are a couple of structures in here, a couple of homes that have burned, so they actually have a family out here checking to see if they know people, and if they don't, they're just asking what their needs are respectfully, and if they want to drop off anything, they'll taking it. But they're very careful in monitoring who comes in and out of this Hawaiian homestead community here in Le'ali'i. But I did have an opportunity to go in a couple of days ago, and I spoke with Lahaina resident, renowned waterman Archie Kalepa. He said in terms of their community, they are good. Immediate needs. They are fed. They have water. They have ice. They have gas. But now we go into the long-term process. Where are these people going to live in the long term? A lot of these people are still in shelters. And so the hotels are open, or the governor tells us he's working with the hotels. But the question is, how fast is that going to roll out? And what's the plan for the long haul? We're not talking, days, weeks. What's the plan for months and, possibly a year? So those are the questions that have been coming up and the concerns. But in terms of the immediate needs that we've seen when we first came out here a week ago, where people were, running up to our convoy for ice and, arguing over who gets that last gas can, I haven't seen that in a few days now, Ash.
That's good to hear.
Yeah, Chelsea, thank you so much for all you are doing out there. The people of Maui truly appreciate it, and we appreciate you as well. Thank you for all your excellent coverage.
Thank you, Chels. Now to more on the resignation of Herman Andaya, the head of Maui's Emergency Management Agency.
Do you regret not sounding the sirens?
I do not.
A day after that controversial statement, the head of Maui's Emergency Management Agency, Herman Andaya, has resigned. Now, in his resignation, which has been accepted by Mayor Richard Bisson, he cited health reasons as the cause for him stepping away from the role. Since the disaster, Andaya has faced mounting questions about his leadership and especially why the sirens weren't activated. Hawaii's outdoor warning siren system is used for all hazards, including wildfires. Andaya's whereabouts on the night of the fire were also raising concerns. We're working to confirm who will fill the role of emergency management head in light of his resignation.
The FBI is now assisting Maui Police and the Medical Examiner's Office with the process of identifying those badly burned. Hundreds are still missing, and fingerprints and DNA may be the only way to complete the process.
The FBI maintains the largest repository of fingerprint data in the world, as well as the largest non-commercial DNA database.
Family members of the missing are being asked to provide DNA samples to help with identification. The Family Assistance Center, which used to be at the Kahului Community Center, is moving to the Hyatt Regency in Ka'anapali starting today. The new location will provide a one-stop shop of resources and services for those who have been affected by the Maui wildfires. The FBI is asking the relatives of the missing on Maui to go there to get swabbed. If you don't live on Maui, there's information on our website, hawaiinewsnow.com. The FBI says they will only use the samples to identify victims, and they will not retain the samples after. A team of agents from the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives from Honolulu have arrived on Maui to help determine the origin and cause of the fire. Several West Coast agents are set to arrive today as well. The National Response Team is made up of experts on arson, explosives, and wildland fires.
Coming up tonight, Governor Josh Green and First Lady Jamie Kanani Green will provide a critical update on the coordinated response to the Maui wildfires. The statewide address will begin at 6 o'clock p.m. and Hawaii News Now will air it on air and online. Once again, his state address will begin at 6 p.m. 71-year-old Donna Gomes of Lahaina is the latest victim to be named. Her family's GoFundMe page says they lost their homes and everything they owned. 71-year-old Melva Benjamin is another victim. Her family gave us this photo. County officials confirmed her passing on Wednesday, one of 5 people who have been officially identified of the 111 that have so far been confirmed killed. That list also includes 90-year-old Virginia Dofa and 79-year-old Alfredo Galinato. His family's home was also destroyed in the fire. MPD also identified longtime Maui musician as 79-year-old Buddy Jantok, and also 74-year-old Robert Dykeman was also identified. To help ID loved ones lost in the fire, people are urged to get DNA cheek swabs at the Family Assistance Center.
The Red Cross is moving more survivors out of shelters and into hotel rooms across Maui. The organization says 750 hotel rooms are currently blocked off for those impacted. The lodging is being covered by the federal government and will be available for at least the next 7 to 8 months and likely beyond. Red Cross staff will also help people with medical care, emotional support, and casework.
It's not just giving somebody a voucher for a hotel or they'll go find someplace to stay for 2 weeks and renew it every 2 weeks. Once you're in this program and you get full wraparound services, as we call them.
To be moved into a hotel room, evacuees must register with FEMA, but they don't need to be eligible for FEMA aid. Those currently staying in congregate shelters will be the first to be relocated. The Red Cross will also reach out to anyone camped out in tents and cars throughout the community.
And a reminder from the state and Maui County, they are reminding everyone on Maui that access to the fire-ravaged Lahaina area remains off limits to all unauthorized personnel. Law enforcement said several members of the media have been contacted and warned after going into the affected area. Officials said there will be zero tolerance for anyone who trespasses, including residents of the area, the media, and the general public. Any trespassers will be cited or arrested. Officials emphasize the area is not safe, and it's also disrespectful for anyone to wander in and around the area without authorization. Once active search and recovery efforts are completed, officials said they will attempt to provide access. And as the fallout from the fires continues, Hawaiian Electric Company is now facing another lawsuit. This one is from a retired judge who lost his home in Upcountry. This is what's left of Shackley Raffetto's property. His lawyer says it appears the fire began when a tree fell on some power lines and that HECO should have turned them off.
But it seems pretty clear that had they powered off or down in selected areas, that the fires would have either been easy to take care of or wouldn't have occurred.
The Kula fire destroyed at least 19 homes and contaminated the water system. Hawaiian Electric has not yet commented on any pending lawsuits, but experts say if the company is found liable, it could be forced into bankruptcy reorganization.
A new development for Maui's students and parents. The Department of Education announced that King Kekaulike High School in Upcountry Maui will begin a phased reopening next week. Staff will return to campus on Monday and students will come back on Wednesday. We're told there's wind damage at the Kula campus, including dislodged roof shingles and downed light poles. Crews will be cleaning up the facilities through the weekend. Meanwhile, staff from Lahaina's public schools will remain on paid administrative leave through Wednesday. Crews are still clearing debris and testing water quality at Princess Nahi'enaena Elementary, Lahaina Intermediate, and Lahaina Luna High. The campuses are still off limits to students and staff. The DOE says about 400 displaced West Maui students have enrolled in other public schools, while 200 others opted for distance learning. Meanwhile, a temporary solution to a school bus driver shortage on Oahu and Kauai. Governor Josh Green issued an emergency proclamation allowing the Department of Transportation to use vehicles other than buses to transport students. Bus routes to 14 schools are suspended. The proclamation runs through October 15.
Now, there has been an outpouring of aloha and generosity following the devastation on Maui, but unfortunately, scammers will always try to take advantage of that. Michael George reports on some of the red flags you should look out for when donating to charities.
Donations are pouring into Maui to help the thousands of people left homeless from wildfires.
This is the type of things that our community does best, and we stick together.
Besides basic needs, legitimate organizations are also asking for money, but so are criminals posing as charities.
We want people to know that whenever there's a natural disaster, scammers are quick to follow.
Colleen Tressler with the Federal Trade Commission says scam artists may contact you about donations through phone calls, email, and social media. Are there red flags that people should look out for that might be signs that it's not a legitimate charity?
Absolutely. These scammers very often create a sense of urgency, and you're really not thinking as clearly as you would normally. Some of these scammers use very similar sounding names to organizations, charities that we all know.
Another red flag, criminals often ask for payment with cash, gift cards, wire transfer, or cryptocurrency.
We really recommend that you pay by credit card, which gives you a lot more consumer protections.
Tressler says you should only donate to charities you trust. You can verify the legitimacy of a nonprofit through sites like Charity Watch, Charity Navigator, and others.
Every dollar that a scammer takes out of a generous person's pocket means that money isn't going to the people in need.
A little research can help guarantee the money you send gets to the right place. Michael George, CBS News, New York.
And now a reminder for donations. First off, officials are asking people to hold off on sending any more clothing and material items as they have been flooded and resource centers are still going through the donations already received. Cash is best to donate, but if you are sending items there such as food, water, or other items, you are reminded to have a designated receiver on the ground on Maui. Otherwise, your donation could get lost and mixed up with other federal agencies.
Philadelphia artist and police officer Johnny Castro created a portrait of Lahaina victim Franklin Trejos and Sam, the golden retriever that he tried to protect from the flames. Both the remains were found in the back seat of Trejos' car. Castro told us he was moved to honor Trejos after learning about his final moments of bravery.
I mean, just the selflessness behind, how he passed away and, trying to save the life of Sam. I just, it hit me in my heart. I have a golden retriever too. So, I read that and I said, I wanted to share his story because a lot of people out here probably, they've heard about the fires, but they may not have read his stories.
Castro says each one of his portraits is painted from his heart. He'll now have this one professionally printed and is reaching out to Trejos' family as well as his friends on Maui to ship it to them for free. All right, let's take a live look outside on this Aloha Friday. This is looking over downtown Honolulu. You can see Diamond Head there in the back. Lots of sunshine today, 83 degrees. Lots of trade winds in the forecast, and we have some systems we're following. Here's Guy Hagi with your forecast.
How's it on this Friday? The cyclonic activity is winding down, just down to remnants for both Fernanda and Greg. Greg's still having an effect, though. It's still going to be a little bit windy today as winds flow into Greg. But we're watching and more concerned with the remnants, the leftovers of Fernanda, which could bring some heavy rain the early part of next week, especially for the east end of the state. So until Sunday, that's when we expect it in. It's going to be mostly dry, just a few minor splashes for those windward areas in the early morning and overnight hours. Not a lot of rain, although, like I said, what's left of Fernanda could bring some heavy rain, especially on Monday and Tuesday for the east end of the state. And there are those winds. They'll be running kind of firm today. It's going to be a pleasant day with those trade winds helping to keep us cooler with all the sunshine. High temperatures running to the upper 80s. So it's going to be a warm day today, but those trade winds will hold firm, keeping us cool. And also it's going to keep the surf elevated on the east shore, but it's going to be choppy out there. Otherwise, no significant swells are expected in anytime soon. So it should be a pretty nice weekend of, fairly dry, although starting on Sunday, the remnants of Fernanda move in. Especially for Hawaii Island and Maui County, you could see some heavy rain on Monday and on Tuesday. And that could hamper the recovery efforts and relief efforts over on Maui. Drier weather due back on Wednesday.
Oh, she's my sweet, sweet lady of Waihole.
Now to some sad news from the Hawaiian music community. Walter Aipolani, the beloved musician known as Brother Walter, has died after a battle with liver cancer. Known as the father of Hawaiian reggae, the Naho Kuhanohano award-winning singer and songwriter was best known for his 80s hit, Sweet Lady of Waihole. He was also a strong advocate for Native Hawaiian rights, and last year he was honored with a 3-hour tribute concert at the Hilo Palace Theater. Tributes to his life and legacy poured in online last night. Brother Walter was 68 years old.
President Biden hosted the leaders of Japan and South Korea at Camp David today in hopes of building a united front against China. Now, despite their nation's difficult history, the two key allies say they are committed to each other and ready to respond to any threats in the Pacific. Natalie Brand has more.
President Biden is hosting a historic summit at Camp David, the first standalone meeting between the leaders of the U.S., Japan, and South Korea.
Our countries are stronger and the world will be safer as we stand together.
This is a big deal. It sets the conditions for a more peaceful and prosperous Indo-Pacific and a stronger and more secure United States of America.
National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan says the nations are committing to military cooperation and shared defense exercises, and leaders will establish a new hotline to consult on any emerging threats, including those from China and North Korea.
I think the overarching consensus in Washington is that China is our main strategic competitor, and that we have to do everything that we can to try to put pressure on China and to show a united front against China in East Asia.
George Washington University professor Greg Brzezinski says he'll be watching to see if there's a commitment to more regular trilateral meetings between the nations. Even though Japan and South Korea are both allies to the United States, they have a long, difficult history with each other. The tension dates back decades to Japan's rule over the Korean Peninsula from 1910 to 1945.
There's been a lot of disagreements between the two countries, in part because Japan has, in a lot of ways, had difficulties coming to terms with its past.
The Biden administration says it hopes the summit lays a foundation for a new era of cooperation. Natalie Brandt, CBS News, Washington.
Well, some of the sentences for the January 6 rioters may be invalidated. A federal appeals court in Washington ruled Friday that Capitol rioter James Little couldn't receive a sentence of prison followed by probation for his petty offense. Judges in D.C. had used these split sentences for low-level January 6 offenders to briefly jail them as punishment for their role in the historic attack on the Capitol, and then to keep them under court supervision through the next election. The appeals court wrote, "Probation and imprisonment are alternative sentences that cannot generally be combined into a single sentence." Now, the decision jeopardizes the sentences of others who have been convicted of misdemeanors for trespassing at the Capitol and sentenced to both jail time and probation. There was one solo dissenter on the panel, Circuit Judge Robert Wilkins. He wrote in his dissent that Congress passed an amendment in 1994 to the Sentencing Reform Act that permitted split sentence as an exception.
The Writers Guild of America met again with representatives of the major studios as both sides try to resolve a 108-day strike. The two sides remain far apart on several items, including a staffing minimum in TV and a viewership-based streaming residual. The heads of Netflix, Warner Brothers Discovery, NBC, Universal, and Disney are holding a joint call today to discuss what comes next.